today's video, I want to talk about Oracle identity columns. These are relatively new to Oracle. I first came across identity columns in SQL Server, and what you use them for is to generate unique IDs for values in your tables. And it was something that was recently introduced in Oracle, relatively recently, within the last few years. Before then, you would use sequences and triggers, and now there are the options available for identity columns. I figured I'd do a video on it while it's fresh in mind for other people who are coming from the same perspective and haven't really used them that much in Oracle. So again, identity columns, they're just unique number generators. So you use them to generate surrogate keys, and surrogate is just a fancy word for having no actual business meaning. Like a name actually has meaning, um, but a surrogate key is just something that is unique to the system and generally just assigned. It could be assigned at random, but the easiest way to guarantee uniqueness is just increase the value over time and just make sure that those values do not get repeated. And as I said, this was originally introduced in 12.1, and I actually didn't start using them until over the last, like I'd say, year or so. And currently using Oracle version 19. And Oracle did not go straight from did go straight from 12.1 to 19, so there wasn't a bunch of versions in between. And 12.1, I believe, was introduced in 2014 or so. And what they do is they replace the need. Typically, what you would have in Oracle is you would create a trigger, and then you would create a sequence object. And what happens is every time you insert into the table, you go and get the next value from the sequence generator. So here's some syntax examples. I've got a create table, and then I have my ID column, and generally it's going to be a number. And then you would say generated always as identity. And what that means is that it's always going to generate the value. So if you tried to assign a value in this case outside of the generation, the identity generation, it would not allow you to get an error. So if you want to avoid that and you want to be able to override that behavior and supply your own values when you want to, then you would say generated by default as identity. So that would mean if you don't supply a value, then it's going to go and use uh, the identity sequence generation to assign your value, but you would still have the option of assigning your own. And then you would need to make sure that the values that you're using are going to overlap and and create a duplicate on the identifier. So I did dig into the internals of this a little bit. And what Oracle's doing behind the scenes, it's still using a sequence. So it's kind of just automating the sequence and trigger that you have used in the past with Oracle. And if you go and look inside the user tables data default column for the table that you've created this identity column in, you'll see something like this, where you've got this I seek dollar dollar. That's just the token that Oracle uses when creating the sequence name, and then some number on the end of it. And then next val just means it's going to get the next value from the sequence whenever you do an insert into the table. What you won't see is a related trigger. So they must have some sort of internal trigger that they don't expose to you that is controlling the access to the sequence. So I had a table I had created with an identity column, and I had a need to renumber. And so I figured I'd go through that process in case someone else encounters the same task at some point. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that your identity column is not declared as generated always as identity. Okay, so in order to change that, you would have to issue an alter table command. So here I'm saying alter table and then my table name. Then I'm going to modify the identity column to number generated by default as identity. So that would allow you to override the values if you wanted to. So the above would allow updates now on the ID column. So you would not be able to update the ID column if it was declared as generated always. So you can retrieve the underlying sequence from the database by going to user tab columns, and then you pass the table name, and then you give the name of the column name of the identity column. In my case, it's ID. And then if you want to assign values to it using that same sequence, so this was a sequence that was returned from this query, and I could just say update identity test tab and set the ID. And then all I'm doing is getting a bunch of new sequence values, which is what I needed to do in my case, because we were sending out information to an external entity and we needed to send them new IDs. It was just an internal thing to the external vendor that we were working with. And they needed a new set of identifiers so that they would see the new data that gets sent as unique. That'll do it for today's video. I figured it was a good topic to go over, quick hitter. There's probably not a lot of references out there for identity columns in Oracle, so a few minutes here hopefully will help some other people who are struggling or just want to go over the details before they dig in. So if you enjoyed the video, please like it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Add your comments below. And of course, if you have questions, drop them below. And if it's something that we can do a video on, we sure will. Thanks. Bye.